Welcome back. In about 2.5 weeks, Governor Ned Lamont's executive powers are scheduled to expire. The emergency authority has been in place since early March of last year. The executive orders that have come from that authority include a mask mandate in schools. Here to talk about that is Chris Powell, opinion columnist with the Journal-Inquirer newspaper. Chris, thank you for being with us. You wrote way back in January that the emergency powers led to a monarchy. Is that still your opinion?
Well, it's a benevolent monarchy, Eric, but I think the bigger problem with extending them now is that there's really no emergency. You know, an emergency is something the dictionary says is sudden and urgent and unexpected. Well, nothing has been happening really that's been new for months now. We've been dealing with this epidemic for 18 months. We know what our options are. We go back and forth with our options. There's no emergency. I think that's really the reason why the orders should not be extended, why the power should not be extended. The other reason is simply democracy. The governor's orders are affecting really every aspect of life in Connecticut. You can't leave your house for a half hour without bumping into one of the regulations. If those orders are so extensive, these things ought to be ratified through the ordinary democratic procedures. If we're changing them, we're repealing them, we're imposing them again, well, the people's representatives ought to be involved in that. Now, I understand why they don't want to be involved in it. They don't want to take the responsibility. And the governor is very glad to make law without the legislature. He doesn't want to be bothered with them. But that's not our system. And I'm afraid we're going to get out of the habit of democracy if we extend the emergency powers.
Isn't one of the issues with that, though, speed, Chris? Because, I mean, you've covered the legislature a long time. You know, nothing gets done fast over there unless it happens to be about 11:45 on the last day of the session. So if we have to go back to the legislature and say, should we extend masks in schools to October 31st or to November 30th, isn't there a chance they'll make a decision like January about what happened in October?
Well, that's the argument for dictatorship, Eric. Dictatorships are supposedly much more efficient. But, somehow, Hitler and Tojo lost the war.
Wow, I didn't think we were going to go right to the Hitler reference, but Chris Powell going there. Listen, I want to ask you this about masks in schools. We've seen these big protests. We've seen the parents coming and yelling and shouting at the governor when he was at the forum about it. What do you make of all this from parents who are just so outraged that their child has to wear a mask per the governor's order?
Well, I'm sympathetic to the governor. I'm glad I don't have to deal with this epidemic every day. I'm not sure that the medical evidence for the masks is very persuasive, but I think you're looking at a political compromise here. The governor is absolutely right about one thing, and that is we got to get the kids back into school. A lot of parents are going to be very reluctant to send their kids to school unless mask wearing is the rule. So, masks aren't going to kill anybody in school. If the masks help get kids back to school, the governor sees how important that is.
Another point you made in a column recently is that some of this money that the federal government's sending down for COVID relief should be spent on ventilation systems in schools. Do you see that happening, and do you think it's important?
Well, I think parents would think it's important, but we have laws in this state that make it almost impossible to assign priority to anything in government that does not involve the compensation of government's employees. The schools and the governor's budget office have been exchanging really unsatisfactory communications lately about where's the money for improving school ventilation systems amid the epidemic. State government has not been providing that money. The governor's deputy budget director, who's in charge of this stuff, scolded the municipalities for not stepping up and finding the money. But that was, I thought, terribly hypocritical. State government, it imposes on municipalities binding arbitration of government employee union contracts. We also have a law in Connecticut that actually makes it illegal for school systems to cut their spending even as the enrollment goes to zero. Now, if state government is tying the hands of schools this badly, it's state government's fault that they don't have any money for improving the ventilation. It's not town government's fault.
Obviously, we have a statewide election coming up next year. Is that going to be something that a lot of these politicians, whether it's the legislature making these decisions or the governor who, insists he's still trying to make up his mind, but everyone just thinks is running, is that election going to be looming? Is that going to be a big referendum on all this?
Well, I think, there's going to be people, constituents, voters mad on both sides. I think that's one reason why the legislators, or at least the Democratic legislators, are so eager to abdicate to the governor on everything involving the epidemic. I'm not sure that the governor is quite as eager to be the monarch going forward. We just authorized the towns to decide on mask policy and businesses and commerce and things like that. That seemed like he was looking to wash his hands a little bit of the whole thing, too, at least to share the blame with somebody else.
All right, Chris Powell from the Journal-Inquirer. We always appreciate having you on and talking about these opinions. A lot to think about, and always a lot to think about when we read your column. As it appears a few times a week, we appreciate you coming on, Chris, and we'll see you again here soon.
Thank you, Eric.
And coming up next, what's going on with UConn football? We're talking about the resignation of head coach Randy Edsall with two veteran sports journalists, our own sports director Joe Zone, and the Day's Mike DeMoro. It's coming up right after the break.